Mistakes. Sometimes it's our mistakes which makes us realize we are living in an imperfect system. A lot of times we know about it, but we never think too much about it until we are subject to these imperfections. Today's conversation is not any different. From a grave mistake to activism, conversation today brings a small change perhaps to highlight those imperfections in our legal systems. It's a story of Ryan Forbes. I'm your host Faizan Ali, and you're watching Not So Casual Talk. I really appreciate your time, and I know it's a very sensitive subject, and it's something that not a lot of people are eager to share or even comfortable sharing, specifically when it comes to themselves, when they are in the middle of the situation, or when they are, when they know that they have made a mistake and they're trying to go through with this situation. So it's really, I would say, it's courage that you need, and that you have shown that you won't do something about it, and that's the important thing. Can you share a little bit about what actually happened, what was your situation, and then we will take it from there.
Sure. Basically, for about a decade, I worked as a software engineer. That became my focus. Even starting in college, that was my big focus, is I was going to be a software engineer, and I just wanted to keep moving up and up. And I had a lot of great opportunities here in the States. I found opportunities working. I started in a startup, and then I found work at the Department of Defense, for the Army, for the Air Force, and then ultimately, and then in online companies for resort companies, and then ultimately into Fortune 500 companies working for them. But what was happening that I didn't realize was that I was putting that way above everything else in my life. I had put becoming that work and everything above my family, my friends, and everything. And I basically isolated myself by doing all these moves, and was not even taking care of myself. And so one night when I was trying to go out and make friends in this new town I was in, I was doing it the only way I knew how, which was go to just a happy hour and go out and drink. And I was finally starting to meet some people, finally starting to get to know some people, and they wanted to do shots. And even though I knew at that time that I had a very strong penchant for blacking out when I drank, I was like, yeah, might as well. Let's do it. I want to make friends. I want to do that. I ended up blacking out, and even though I had walked to the bars that night, I, for whatever reason, got in my car, started driving around, and drove into someone else and killed them. And so the cops found me a mile away from the scene, and I was arrested. I was able to get a hold of my family. They found me a lawyer, and from there, I basically went through treatment, and then while I was awaiting sentencing, because I had admitted guilt from the beginning, but I knew from the beginning I was also going to go to prison. There was no going around that. I was going to do some amount of time in prison. It was just, was I going to do 2 years or was I going to do 20 years? And the DA wanted 20. And so when I went out to sentencing, the judge was like, all right, well, we'll split the baby. You'll do 10 years in prison and 10 years in probation. And on any sentence for that type of sentence, for any violent sentence, you have to do at least half. So I wasn't even eligible for parole until 5 years in, which just happened to be the pandemic. And then I fortunately made my parole, so I did 6 years in prison and got out right as things were starting to clear up in 2021 from the pandemic. And then from there, one of the things that I've been doing now is my criminal justice podcast, which I thought about when I was locked up. because I didn't know how the legal system worked. I didn't know how prison worked. I didn't understand those. And I don't think most people do. I think they have I don't, and I think it's important that people understand how it actually works.
You mentioned last time in our conversation that you were even studying criminal law and all that. Did you do any degree, any masters or something about it?
Yes. So while I was in prison, I actually studied, I got another bachelor's. I got a bachelor's in sociology, and I also was studying victim advocacy as part of that degree. I got a victim advocacy certification, which also involved me studying, what is it, state laws and not state and federal laws, which is victim advocacy is actually part of the legal program, and the certification was through the legal program. I do not like studying the legal aspect. Like, it was really hard while in prison, like really super emotional to study like the legal stuff. It was hard. It's helpful knowing that now, because kind of knowing the differences between the laws is really crazy when you find out what the differences are. And I also kind of wish I studied some criminology as part of my sociology degree program. You can't just do one. Even though I specialized in social welfare, I did some of the criminology background too. And honestly, I kind of wish I had done more. It was just kind of, while I was in prison, I was like, I don't want to study criminals while I'm in prison. I'm just doing that all the time anyway. So, yeah, so I studied criminology, as part of my sociology, and as well as, victim advocacy.
All right. I mean, but when it comes to this education, I think you cannot be a paralegal. You can maybe what kind of association you can have.
You, well, for you can there are people who do study to become paralegals, from prison. You're coming, that's like the most common one. I'm not so interested in that. That's kind of not the paralegal side is working within the constraints of the legal system. And I really I got the sociology. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with a sociology degree. I just wanted to find some way to help people and prevent them from falling into the traps that I did that led into prison. But then as I was going through it, I'm like, this, one of the biggest things for me, actually, that I didn't talk about before with my case, was that the hardest part was when I was in the sentencing hearing, was watching the victim's family, who I had wanted to apologize to from the beginning and wanted to explain, like, go through and say, I'm sorry, I did this. I want, how can I make amends? How can I work with you? What can I do for you? I was never allowed to do that. And I was told over again, do not contact them. Do not contact them. Do not contact them. Then I was in the courtroom, and then they're like, well, say things to them. I'm like, now? What? This is supposed to be the time I'm supposed to be defending myself. And this is not, and I'm also not talking to them. I'm talking to a room full of people.
Yeah.
It was a mess. And during that, they were more hurt leaving that room. Like, from what I could see, they were more hurt leaving that room than when they came in. And I can't stand that. To think that because of the way the process was set up, I actually was doing more damage to them just going through the process, even though I never was like resisting. I just didn't want to spend the rest of my life in prison. And so the fact that that's the way it was set up really drove me nuts. So that was what I was kind of studying. So for me, there's two aspects of it. One is I don't want anyone to cause the pain that I cause. And in part of that is having a legal system the way it is right now causes more pain like I caused. So there has to be a way to change it. And those are the way, that's what I'm looking for right now, is ways to inspire change so that won't happen again.
Were you allowed to talk to the victim's family after the whole process was done? Like right now, are you allowed to contact them or something, or no?
I mean, what it comes down to is now it's down to causing harm. And I'm not trying to reach out or anything to them because, like I said, when they left that courtroom, it was like they're done. Done. They put this to bed. And that was kind of the way it was designed, is to like put an end to this thing. And I feel like me reaching out is just opening up an old wound that doesn't really need to be opened up, except for if I wanted to feel better about me. No, I don't want to do that. I don't need that gratification. To me, it's just more important to make sure that other people don't do that. And it would I have loved a whole different process from the beginning that could have given them more from the beginning? Absolutely. But that wasn't an option.
During the whole process, what triggered you to actually look at the legal system? What are the things that you saw were affecting you from the moment that it happened until the whole your prison sentence, every single thing was done?
So one of the biggest things that affected me that I did not understand. So my decisions from the beginning was even though I couldn't remember that night, I knew it was me. I did it. I'm not going to deny it. It would have just caused more hurt if I had sat there trying to fight it. So I'm like, I did it. I take ownership of it. I'll take the consequences as they come. I thought that was the moral thing to do. And even though that might have been the moral thing to do, that was not the correct legal thing to do in my case. Because the way the legal system works, as I know now, you always go in saying not guilty, period. Because most cases don't go to trial. And when I say most, it's 90% and above don't go to trial. And the reason they don't go to trial is because when you hire a lawyer or whatever, however you do it, that you're the lawyer, that's your defense attorney, takes what you say, presents it to the DA, and the DA comes back with a plea. The plea is it's like a negotiation. It's barter. You give me this, I'll give you some time off for your sentence. I'll lighten your sentence. When I came in saying guilty, I basically just handed them everything. So there was no incentive. And especially in a wealthy white county in Texas, it's not just wealthy and white. The county in Texas I was in was broken into two halves. There is one half that was living in $1 million houses, and then there was another half that was living just above the poverty line. And the half that was living in the $1 million houses was not approving of all the DUIs and all the drunk offenses and all of the intoxication offenses. Basically, all of the people on the poverty side were getting in that county. So their solution was, we need to be tougher on any sort of intoxication offense. So the tougher the DA and the judge are on that case, on my case in particular, all right, they get kudos, all right? The lighter they were on my case, they don't win anything. They don't get anything. Even if it was a different county. Let's say it was a more liberal county and they are totally for reform and all that kind of stuff. Really, if they do anything, like if they're tough on me and I go in and I come out, even if I'm angry and upset, whatever, they don't lose anything by giving me a tougher sentence. All right. Because it's just for them, it's just another sentence. However, if they go light on me and then during that time I'm on probation or whatever, or in my lifetime, I commit another DUI, which is incredibly likely if you don't get treatment and you don't have help and you don't have a good support group, then what can happen is some angry family can go, this guy got out because of this district attorney or this judge. And then that will now sour that judge or district attorney and make sure that they go harsher on sentences. And they could potentially lose their job, and because they were too light one time. So for them, the calculus is easy. Just always be hard unless there's some incentive to go light. And because I just said guilty from the beginning, there was no incentive for them to give me anything. It's not about, like, people really think about the law and order at like They're looking, there's cops. They're on their, they're walking around. They're looking for clues. And then they work with the district attorney to find over. Actually, if you watch Law and Order, the district attorney's only thing that they do is they just take whatever the cops give them and just try and get the sentence as big as possible, which is one thing that Law and Order does right. I will give them credit for on that. But other than that, that's not what's happening. And if it's really like I said, I gave them everything. There was no incentive. So they just wanted to let it ride. And, I wasn't going since I was doing that too, my lawyer is just like, well, why don't you give me more money? And let's take this in front of a jury. And let's make this at the most expensive, big case it can possibly be. I'm like, can't I just
be done with it?
Yeah, let's be done with this. Let me just say I'm happy to just say in front of a judge, I'm guilty. I did it. But that's, once again, that's not your honesty, your character honestly doesn't matter. The legal system is designed to look to see, basically it's guilt or innocence. And then the DA, once again, doesn't care how nice a person you are. They get points the more time they can put on your sentence, which is why so many people, even when they don't commit a crime, they'll take a deal because they know they can get way worse than the DA
if you
goes.
Yeah.
If you lose the case in the courtroom.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate too. I could have easily gotten just 20 years in prison, spent 10 years probation. And honestly, because I came up during COVID, that was a big part of why I was able to make my first parole hearing. People with my case generally don't make their first parole hearing. A lot of times they do their full sentence. But fortunately, during COVID, they were trying to get people out because, that's a whole nother story. Being locked up during COVID, prison was a bad place to be during COVID.
Yeah. It's just a theory. I'm just trying to hypothetically think. Do you think maybe they were more tough on you because you were not from the same state, number one? And number two, because you obviously, and you have already mentioned it, you have just given them every single thing on a silver platter, so they could just ring you in. And then the thing is that I personally feel like maybe it's also because because you have already gone and pleaded and everything, they just wanted to make it as tough for you as possible to make a statement. Maybe.
So I missed the first part because it froze up there for a second. But you're saying, were they making it tough possibly because they didn't want me to make a statement or basically just to make a statement, correct?
Yeah. That was the second part. And the first part was because you were not from the same county. Originally you're not from from Texas, right? So maybe that was another reason why they were more strict on you.
It's possible. And I don't know. I don't know how much me not being from the county affected that. That was my residence at the time, was inside that county. But I don't know. I really don't know if it would have made a huge difference. To me, the biggest thing, I think it's because, all right. So another thing is that I've been back in front of that judge. So after I got out of prison, I'm in Colorado right now. So I'm not in Texas anymore. I got to go to Colorado. I had to get an interstate compact while I was in prison, also during COVID. And I got approval to do the terms of my probation and parole up here in Colorado. And one of the conditions he put on there was that I still had to go back to that exact same jail that I first went to in Texas. So, but I'd only had to go there for 24 hours once a year, which is, okay, first time I had to do it was in the middle of the pandemic, which was intense. That was scary, a mess, and a huge deal. But the second time I did it was a huge deal only because it was, the way it worked was I basically had to schedule, like I had to like get a hotel, I had to get planned flights because I couldn't just fly around it because of the way the flight schedule worked and the way I had to be there at a certain time, get checked in, and then I'd leave at, well, I was supposed to leave at a certain time, but they were happy to let me just sit there in the jail for over my 24 hours. And it was it like it was it was going to be, for someone who didn't have the family and support I had, they wouldn't have even been able to afford the first trip, let alone two more. So I went in front of the judge and said, "Can we please do something about this? Can we please, like, I've met all the other conditions. Can we please, like, work on this one condition, this one?" And let me be clear. I was locked up in prison for 6 years. I talked to a lot of people about my sentence. I've talked to people outside about my sentence. No one has ever heard of a condition like this. Period. And I'm happy. Like, if there's anyone in the audience who's had this happen, please let me know, because you would be the first person I have heard of who has had a condition where they have to go, after going to prison, go to jail once a day, a year for 10 years following your prison sentence. Unheard of. So anyway, yeah. So on top of probation and parole, which I'm still on both. So I go in front of the judge again, and I'm once again just pleading my case. And he's like, and this was his response. Seemed like a good idea to me at the time. In exactly that tone, with basically exactly that look. I might be giving it a much nicer look. He did not want to hear it. Period. And he's like, and I'm telling, and like at that time I had a full-time job. I had a bunch of stuff going on. I'm like, what? And so I'm like, I need to do all of these things. And I couldn't believe it. I'm like, you need me to do all of these, like, you need me to come back. And he's like, so this was his sympathetic response. He's like, all right, tell you what, you can do all of it, all of the time, all at once. And you have to write me a 5-page essay explaining how sorry you are.
It feels like college, man.
Right. So I really don't think it has to do with me being from Colorado. I really just think it's kind of that judge, that county, that DA.
I think the judge was just bored. Like, do I need to do something? Can I just give him something to do?
And I'll tell you, that's another thing I learned about the legal system. When a cop catches you, you're in front of a judge or anything, you've already lost. Period. Right? You have already lost. I've seen, it's not just with me, not just with my case. I've watched this happen so many times. I've watched it happen in prison with officers. When someone's looking for a problem and they get you, they feel like they've got you, and they're wrong, even if they're wrong about the thing they got you for, they pull you over, and they think they saw a puff of smoke come out your window, and they search your car and there's nothing in it. Okay. They're going to get you for a busted taillight.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. So they're going to find something. And I've watched it happen so many times. The same thing is when you're in front of a judge. The judge assumes that if you're in front of them, there's something that you did wrong. And I heard so many stories about the exact same thing. Like, they're like, I didn't have anything. There was nothing. And they fought their case so well. And then the judge comes up with something new and just inserts it in there just because. And they can't let it go. This idea, to me, this is one of the biggest problems, is we have this assumption, like the way the system is set up now, it's combative, where one side has to be right, one side has to be wrong. And then there's a big punishment aspect to it. If we were working on, if this, like when I was in treatment, when there was all about rehabilitation and working on the person, there's none of that, because the whole point is, does this person need help or not? Oh, they don't need help? Walk out the door. Done with it. And that it's like, are you not going to use our help? Okay, well, I can't help you.
One thing that I've also realized in a lot of cases, and a lot of my friends who are lawyers, they themselves has mentioned this to me. Like whenever there is a situation, it doesn't matter whether you are right or wrong. The point is, what do you want to do? Do you want to be charged as guilty? Do you, like in your
Yeah.
case, you just simply accepted whatever is my fate. I know I accepted every single thing. And that is something that a lot of lawyers who are my friends, they have said that to me, that, like, never admit your guilt. Because it's not your responsibility to give them everything on silver platter. Yeah, okay, incident happened. Now, when you go in front of a judge, because this is the system that we are living in, regardless of which country you are in, I'm not going to target a specific country because I know like every country has their own different set of rules, regulations, the kind of system that they have, how strict are the rules, and how the legal system work. I can't just simply blank slate for everybody. But in a lot of countries, like I have experienced myself in Asia, not to the extent that you have been through, but just a little bit. And one thing that I've realized is that, regardless of whether you're right or wrong, the only thing that matters is who do you know. So in most
Yes.
of these cases, is how good is your lawyer. So if your lawyer is good, he knows the judge, he knows who's who's going to be running the show. And most of the time, like you mentioned earlier, they try to make the deal outside of the courtroom. So if the deal is made outside of the courtroom, then there's a lot of room to negotiate,
And
So, yeah.
yeah, there's a caveat to what you just said about how good the lawyer is. Because I'm willing to bet my lawyer was good. I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. I'm not going to put him on blast or anything. But here's my thing about lawyers as a general rule that I've also learned. The lawyer, your defense attorney, has to work with the DA to make your deal, period. And not just your deal, has to work to make all deals in the future. So they hang out together. The DAs and the defense attorneys, they have to work together. They hang out. They play. It's good for them to be on good terms with each other. That said, they both need each other. They need each other to look good. So what has to happen then is the DA, like the defense attorney, is going to need some wins, and the DA is going to need some wins on both sides. And I think sometimes, especially with the really good defense attorneys, they're going to have to pick out which ones they're going to like throw to the wind.
Yeah.
And like, and which one, like how they're going to hand them over and how that's going to work. Cause I know, so when I went in front, I went to their newest DA, like their brand new straight off that, and she got to like start on a big win. Like she went for 20 years. She got 20 years, and she can put that on her win scorecard
Resume.
right off the start. Yeah. And she can say that, and she's good. And it looks really good for her. And I think, and it ingratiates the defense attorney, my defense attorney, to them. So next time someone does want a jury trial, okay, we'll make sure to give him a good deal. We'll maybe right before the jury trial, we'll give him a plea that they can accept or something, and do it that way. And then that makes him look really good and makes him the type of attorney that other people want.
Yeah. Let's come back to when you were actually in the prison. How was your experience? I know like a lot of people have shared their own experiences, and everybody go through their own experiences. I believe based on their history, maybe their outlook, or maybe the type of connections they have, or whether they are regular in prison or it's their first time. It matters a lot as well. So in your experience, first time experiencing prison, how was your relations with the people in the jail when it comes to your prison mates, and also like people who were like controlling the prison, the management of the prison?
Yeah, so there were, as I said, like I do my podcast with two of the people I met in prison. I met a lot of good people. I met a lot of people who, one of the biggest things I realized is that there's there are a lot of like I went into prison kind of like trying to be sympathetic, trying to like be like everyone's gonna have a, you know, everyone here is like me. They had a hard time. They may probably had a harder life. And I need to be sympathetic to them. And almost right away, I was like, I hate this dude. I hate that dude. I don't want, like, I was like, I really want to fight that dude. Like, it's like from the drop. But that's how prison is designed. Prison is really designed to really divide, like in Texas, especially, it's divided to divide you up into races and then basically pitch you right against each other so that you're like, you know, they're like, it's each group is like pitting against each other and like fighting over what few resources that are in there, which is really, it gets really bad. And I had to really mindfulness treatment, like had like going through like dealing like that really put it to the test because I was like, I am really having some crazy thoughts right now and I need to like drop that.
Every day thinking about Prison Break.
Right, yeah. And so there's a whole bunch, and you know, and of course it's scary, totally scary. Don't know what's going to happen. Don't know who these guys are. Don't know what they're who's telling what. Also I ran into all sorts of scams, all sorts I'm like way more sensitive to people like trying to scam and hustle and things like that now. But at the same time, there's the officers, and the officers, like, I very much sympathize with as well, because no one should want to be an officer, period. It is the worst job. They overwork them, they underpay them. The job is insanely dangerous. I remember one time they they locked an officer inside, this basically this area where he could watch all the dorms. They locked him for like a 12-hour shift. He was locked in there in the middle of summer, no AC. This guy came out and just sweat everywhere. Like everything was soaked through in sweat. And their uniform, they can't clean. They have to be specially dry cleaned. I mean, it was nuts. And oh yeah, and trying to get those uniforms dry cleaned, they have to be dry cleaned on the unit. And officers honestly hate dry cleaning their clothes because they immediately get lost. So they get treated like crap. And the ones that like their job, they're the worst because they like taking out their crap on the inmates. And it gets so bad. And like for an inmate, basically, for me, my whole goal was to kind of just stay out of other people's business, like just stay in my own thing. If it was up to me, actually, the best time I did was when I was in solitary. When I was in solitary, I had all my stuff. I could do all my studies. I could like sit and focus on my work. Food was brought to me. I just sat there and just focused on my schoolwork. I got so many essays done. I had a workout routine, everything just right there. But I can see how after like months and years of that would break someone, because depending on the cell, you don't even have contact with people. And if you don't have resources and like family on the outside, you're not going to have any of the things that I just listed. Other than like extremely low calorie meals brought to you. So that, like, I try to stay out of it. But the thing is some officers, they want right up in it, and they want to get right up in it, and they make rules so that you have to either move or you have to do something and get out of your comfort zone. And it's really like, I'll put it this way. When I started, my firm belief was, if I follow the rules, then I'll get out on my first parole date. By the end, I realized, well before the end, honestly, because you cannot live in a place following their rules, because each officer has different rules. And then there's different rules that the inmates like set up for themselves. And then there's different rules for the unit. And then there's different rules if you're in a program, which the programs are the worst. And so the lesson you learn is, how do I get around all of these different rules? And that's what I became like. That's the inmates who are in there for a long time. That's what they learn. That's the lesson that they learn. It's not how do I obey the rules. It's how do I get around them, because no one can obey the rules.
Before we end our conversation, can you just briefly explain, like, what is your next goal? Like, what do you want to do with the whole, your podcast that you have started? And is there any long-term bigger goal that is in your mind that you want to achieve from this vision of yours?
So the next goal, like my constant goal, is to constantly just educate people about the criminal legal system. I say criminal legal because criminal justice there's not a whole lot of justice. I want there to be a system where there is justice, and I'm always striving to it. And it starts with people understanding how it works right now. And then so that when something happens, if there's a crime that affects them, if there's a crime that's on the news, when they see some courtroom drama on the news, they can look at it and go, what's actually going on? Ask the right questions. Go through and also don't be one of the people who's out there cheering for blood, because that's not going to help either. That's not going to give, when someone's hurt, cheering for blood doesn't give them what they need, or doesn't give them a lot of options. If you're just saying blood, like that's just eye for an eye stuff, and I think there's a proverb about the whole world going blind, but I could be wrong. But the other part is, ultimately what I want to see is, I want to see beyond just me talking about it from my experience, from bringing on people who also have shared experience. I would like to get people together and actually affect actual change in the system, and actually be able to make it so that we have a system that focuses on rehabilitation and actually gives victims voices in the process, and actually shines light on all victims of crimes and finds ways to help everyone heal when there are issues of justice and crime in society.
Thank you so much, Ryan. I really appreciate it. I hope you achieve your goals and your conquest for the vision that you have created for yourself. And I hope to get you back on another episode, because I feel like the topic is so vast and there is so much to share, so much to discuss when it comes to issues which are related to people who are in your position, because you are in a position where you have made a mistake and you have realized it, and now you're trying to do something about it, and not just for yourself but for the society, because there are a lot of people who are in your shoes, and maybe the things that the support that you had, they don't have, so probably that is something that as a society we can do something about it as well. It shouldn't just be a one-man show, right? So if there is anything that I would be able to help you with to accomplish your goals, I will always be there for you. Platform will always be open for you to come and have a discussion. If you want to raise some awareness, you want to raise some specific topics, even I will always be. My platform will always be there for you. And I really appreciate your time. And if there is any last words you want to share before we end our conversation.
No, just thank you so much for having me on the show. It's been great.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Ryan. I appreciate it, and have a nice day.
All right, you too.